Hey, good morning, David.
Hi there. I was not sure if anybody else was coming in as OpenSSF operations, so I actually logged out and logged back in as this so that we could get this going.
No, I appreciate it. Every single time I have tried to start this meeting, it fails. I have done all the required things apparently, but it never works.
Are you logging in via zoom.com?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm out of tips.
Yep.
that was going to be my I got the solution. And then you shot it down. Oh
Yeah.
well, after that, I don't know, but send me a Slack or an email, and I will try to help. I'll try to remember to do this for you. Yeah, actually, email, weirdly enough, is sometimes better because I keep forgetting to check my Slack. So
Oh no, I'm in the same boat.
I don't want to check it too often because I find that it's super easy to get rid of flow, and I want to focus and get something done efficiently.
Slack's
And
just the worst.
Yeah,
for
it's
that
it's
at least,
very distracting.
right, right. I try even with Slack. I want to treat it. Okay, we do in the morning, we do in the evening. We'll do it say right after lunch. But if I do it all the time, you know, I will just do that and not get the work done.
If
Up,
you
and
had
we
a
have another OpenSSF operation. So who's that? Is that
if you
Kay?
had a pleasing black and green IRC window, David, that'd be much more palatable.
Yes. Like
I
mouse
do.
font.
I've done IRC many times, but I don't think that's going to solve my flow problem.
I miss IRC.
Couldn't hurt.
It's still around. There was there's a brouhaha about a takeover, and I guess a number of people have moved to different IRC hosting services, but it's still being used.
Back at the old place, that's the only tool engineering used, and they were trying to force newer things on us, and it was a revolt. And now at this new place, it's all Teams, and Teams is not awesome.
Careful.
Teams is not awesome.
He's got a point.
I can't.
Okay.
I don't. I'm not
My
2008
sure.
feelings aren't
kicks
hurt.
Teams
I'm
in the
not on the
ass.
Teams team.
I suspect they're going to speak out whether you want them to or not, Kay. Oh, are we supposed to be recording this thing? And are we recording
I
this
think
thing?
we already
It
are.
says
So now
I
recording.
believe it's already
Oh, it says
recording.
recording. Okay. All right. So
I'm holding my
stop
tongue
saying all
regarding
those.
Teams.
Yeah. So stop saying all those things you weren't supposed to say. Oddly enough, I don't see. I don't see more.
I'm not going to repeat my spiel for the four of you.
Oh,
Here
let's see. We
go.
have more people in the waiting room.
We do. Okay. We got Luke. We got Rao. Okay.
Okay.
So all right. Good. And Ryan, I think I can make you a co-host. I can.
Hey, moving up in the world. I can't start this meeting, but I'll take it.
You can start it now.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Ryan,
somehow, maybe sometime you and I can look at it together. I always struggle. So I have to somehow get not Teams, what is this, but Zoom to log me in as OpenSSF operations. And then I'm able to, and then it will only remember me as that for some time until all of a sudden it switches back to Kay Williams. So
I see someone has logged in as open containers. I let you in, but I don't know who you actually are. So
yeah, I just fixed it. That's
oh, it's Phil.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, Phil.
Hey there. Yeah, it's a side effect of running the OCI calls. That's my usual login. So.
Not
So
a
apparently
problem.
it's not just us. Yeah, I've tried the all the password stuff, everything. It never works. I don't know what it is.
Are you logged in as someone else, as some other account? Maybe you need to log out first.
Not that I'm aware of, but I mean, besides myself, but yeah, I could try that. Maybe that's
Yeah,
what's
maybe
Well, yeah,
log
that's
out
yeah. You
first
have
and
to
then
log
feel-
out. Yeah, that
And
may
then
be
when you
the
log
trick.
in, but you can't log in through the Zoom desktop app. You have to do it through the
Website.
web
yeah, I go
UI.
through the website, yeah.
Right,
So maybe
but
it's
you
the
have to
log out is
log
the
out
issue.
of your old account first.
That might be it.
We want to try to make it so you can do this.
We're complaining about Teams, but man, Zoom is not my friend either. So
Everybody gets a little diss this morning, huh?
right.
Except IRC.
That's right.
I heard some dissing of IRC
Oh,
how we
you-
started, so it's all opportunity. Excellent. So Ryan, I think this is your show. Is there?
Yeah, just
Do you
looking
want
to
others
see.
to enter the meeting notes
I don't
for our
think we have
names?
a ton for notes, but yeah, if people could please add yourself, I will do that as well. We have a pretty decent amount of folks. Let's see. Okay, we got Luke, we got Phil, we got Rao, we got Crobe. Okay. All right. I think it's 5 minutes past. We can go ahead and get started. So fairly short agenda today, though I think some of this might go on for a little bit for discussion. So a couple of things first, the executive order and OpenSSF updates. So we've been talking about this in various other groups. I had attempted before my honeymoon to go and schedule a meeting with leads and various other folks. I got like 3 responses to the to the meeting request times. So I will attempt to do that again. And Rao, I apologize. I did see your email, but as part of going through the 8 million emails that I have over the past 3 weeks or so, I didn't get a chance to respond to it. But yes, we're still trying to schedule this. I will attempt to do so again. And then once we get that, hopefully we can have a deeper conversation with the leads. But just to highlight, so some of the things that have been happening with the planning committee, we've been talking about identifying critical projects and what that looks like. Okay, I'll give you a moment to talk about that in a second. And then we have a proposal from Mike Scavetta regarding Project Alpha Omega. So this is in regards to kind of securing critical projects. So it's all sort of related. And then we have, as part of the governing board updates that have been happening, it made me realize that we actually have the TAC election coming up this in a few weeks. So months ago, we decided on this entire procedure. And so now we actually have to go ahead and implement it. So we need to go through that. So I wanted to just kind of bring it top of mind and also get people's feedback and comments if there's any concerns regarding that coming up. And then I see that vulnerability disclosures, I'm assuming this is you, Crobe, the working group's guide to coordinated vulnerability disclosure for open source software projects. And this is also somewhat related to the executive order. And so we kind of need to talk through how that's going to work and different aspects as far as the working groups and who's doing what. And yeah, we have a lot of things to try to coordinate. So with that, Kay, would you mind giving us a quick update as far as the executive order goes and some of the work streams that you've got going for that and how we plan to tackle some of that?
Yeah, so there's two things I'm aware of going on that are related to OpenSSF. One is the work that Michael Scavetta is doing on Alpha Omega. That's not it's not limited to the EO, it's broader than the EO, but getting that going helps us to meet EO requirements. So that's one thing. The other thing I'll let people know about is there is a meeting at the White House on Wednesday, upcoming on Wednesday this week. And it is with my understanding is there are about 35 CEOs from corporations across a number of sectors, including technology, critical infrastructure, I think government sector, and I'm not sure what else, but I know technology is there. In that meeting, so first there's a meeting at the White House, and then there will be some announcements at that meeting. And then following that, there's a kind of a panel discussion, I think is what it is, where there'll be more opportunity. And I think those panel discussions might be by sector. And so there'll be more opportunity for tech sector discussions there. One of the things that both NIST and the White House have been very interested in is having the tech sector come together and have a statement that we want to work together to create standards around cybersecurity. And that is likely to reference a couple of one initiative that's in the OpenSSF currently, which is SALSA, and it will make reference to another initiative that's not in the OpenSSF now, but the aim is for it to get there, and that's called SCIM. And SCIM is SCIM, that stands for Supply Chain Integrity Model. That is an initiative that Microsoft is spearheading, and we're just getting it ready. I've been talking with Ryan and a few others of you over the past few weeks. We're getting it ready to move it into OpenSSF. I think it will probably be September when that happens. But the intent is, even though we're spearheading it, we're intending it to be an open source project. And the difference between SALSA and SCIM is that SALSA is more focused on for software. Here's how you gather evidence about software, and here's how you create policy, and then here's how you do the verification. SCIM is more focused on the data layer. So it's intending to be a data store for supply chain information. So the two of those are compatible. So those are my thoughts about EO right now. I think it would be interesting to still go ahead, Ryan, and have a meeting where we get the TAC and the leads together. Maybe we can, with that group, we can talk about both the Alpha, Omega, SCIM, SALSA, and then, kind of look at EO all together and what and how the OpenSSF is contributing to that.
Thank you, Kay. Yeah, I definitely try to get that meeting scheduled again, and hopefully we get a little bit more of a response. I think, David, I even saw your mail yesterday, I believe, regarding trying to get leads to give status updates at this meeting. Yeah, we've been trying to do that for a while now. I don't know if we have schedule conflicts or what, but I would love to have leads here. That's kind of the crux of getting everybody coordinated, would be to get the working groups together here. But so we'll keep trying on that and see what we can do. But I will send out yet another mail, and hopefully we can get a little bit better response this time, and we'll try to get that set up. But I know there's a lot of interest from other members of OpenSSF, so hopefully we can get the leads to get together as well. So,
and if scheduling is an issue, it wouldn't be the worst thing if we made it a kind of a fuller agenda item for the next TAC meeting, and then just we're more explicit in reaching out to the working group leads, letting them know what we were discussing and how we'd like to have them involved. So that's an option.
Yeah, if we can't get a response, yeah, we can definitely leverage this meeting and try to get people to show up to it. So I will certainly make another attempt, and hopefully we get a better response this time. Okay, so the next thing is the Alpha Omega proposal. Mike, do you have something to share, or you just want to talk through it? Or?
I can certainly share, although most of you have seen this now multiple times, so I'm going to apologize again. We can go through this quick. If everybody has seen it, I don't need to go through it, but I think for Matt and Phil, I don't know if you've seen it, and Luke, I think you've just read it. So I'm happy to give the 10-minute spiel.
You're not coming to the tools group next, are you?
It depends how nice your comments are today.
I want to see this 4 times. It's nice, but I want to see it 4 times.
Okay. The fourth time is free. So yeah, Alpha Omega is a project. It's actually 2 projects, but the overall purpose is to identify and it's to improve the security quality of open source components at large, kind of raising the tide of the entire ecosystem. We all recognize that open source is kind of critical to modern technology, and as a group, OpenSSF, I think has a, we'll say, responsibility, or at least, you know, it's certainly in our charter to try to do big things to move the needle significantly. The way we're thinking about this is projects really fall into 1 of 2 categories. There's the high risk and there's everything else. The graph here is shown from the criticality project. We've done other models, or at least I have, based on, you know, a risk algorithm of the day, and they all tend to look like this. So you take the top end of it, whatever you can kind of piece off based on your budget, and you do deep security work on that stuff. So these are critical projects, things that everybody depends on, things that are very core to modern technology, let's say. So something like, you know, Kubernetes, a Linux kernel, OpenLDAP, pick projects like that, OpenSSL, that critical vulnerabilities in can meaningfully impact the world. We want to make sure that those are covered. Now, at the same time, recognize that a lot of those projects have security teams and are doing just fine, and they don't need OpenSSF stepping in and telling them anything really. But we think that there is a sweet spot there where we can provide help without butting in. We can, you know, advocate for better practices or hook people up, or whatever the practices are, to help at least some of these critical communities. So the model here for, and this is the Alpha project. So the model of the Alpha project is you have someone who's kind of on point for that project. So, you know, we'd have let's just say an OpenSSL person, and that person would be liaising between OpenSSF members and the OpenSSL project. In theory, something like coordinated disclosure could come in, but I think that that may be that may just in practice just be a step too far for the, you know, for us to get any kind of pre-disclosure information from these projects. So
Yeah,
even without
Mike?
that, I think the project is still worth it. Yes, David.
Yeah, one thing I didn't see in the list for Alpha, but I'm kind of assuming you had intended it, was the possibility of independent security reviews.
Yes.
Was that okay? So it's not listed, but that's definitely in the Alpha.
I kind of assumed it would be in this.
Yeah, see
Here.
that
It's
I assume that's the
wishy-washy.
response.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll change that and make that clear, because obviously it didn't come across.
Or just add as another bullet, you know.
Yeah.
You know, doing, you know, ensuring you have a security threat, then evaluate independent evaluation, and then additional security help.
That makes sense.
You know, it's hard to know what to evaluate to do independent value if you don't have an idea of what you're trying to do, the security, the threat model.
Right.
Then identify problems and then other help.
Right. No, I do think there's going to be a problem there where having one person or a half a person go in and try to evaluate OpenSSL is probably won't be very effective. Instead, I would think the model would be the person would come in and take a look at the project from a kind of a process, artifacts, how's it going, where you're paying, like understanding the project and engaging like a partner there, and then saying, okay, what you guys need a third-party audit. OpenSSF, can we pay for an audit of, you know, OpenSSL? So I think
and sometimes we scope it. So We don't
Yeah,
audit
totally.
everything. You audit these three
Yeah.
things or whatever.
Right. But the skill set to go in and engage and be a kind of partner there may not be the skill set to actually be doing the audit.
So would you hire an OpenSSL expert? Is that the thinking?
Yes, I think
Because
I
they're
think-
not easy to come by. I mean, you're talking a very rare unicorn here that has that code base.
I probably shouldn't have started with OpenSSL because it's probably the hardest one.
Most of the critical projects, to be honest, the ones you mentioned, the
Mhm.
kernel, Kubernetes, they've got some very high expertise, security experts that work on this day in, day out, and have done,
Well,
how are you going to get individuals that are going to really offer anything here?
we will learn how to do that. I don't presume that anything will be able to start day one. The model that I'm imagining is that this is a resource that is paid by the OpenSSF to do whatever helps the project be more succwoul from a security perspective. So if they need somebody to triage issues, maybe
Give me
that's
some
what the person's
examples,
do.
maybe.
Sorry?
How would I mean, have you done any due diligence as to where they would need help?
That's the first part of the project is understanding for each of, like, we choose projects that we think are critical. We choose a little bit larger of a pool than we'll be able to handle, and then we pare them down based off of learning about those projects. If it turns out that none of these projects actually need help, then we can high five ourselves and say, great, we don't need to do this.
So would the cost come after that high five juncture, or?
Yes, yeah. There would need to be.
There's some, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, I mean, there's some cost to just administer the problem and do, well, maybe not. I mean, maybe that could all be done
Is there
by
really a
volunteer.
problem, though? That's what I'm trying to understand with these critical projects. Have we highlighted one where there is a problem?
No, but we want to approach this in a systematic way. So, we'll kind of start with all, and then we'll say,
Seems
these
like
are
we're
good,
not
these are
trying to-
good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I would imagine, like, okay, so the cost of doing the learning and figuring out what, if this is a problem that we actually need to tackle and how we would tackle all that stuff is minuscule compared to the cost of hiring like 200 people to go after the top, or whatever, lots of people to go after the top projects and be like dedicated. So somebody could handle maybe two, but more likely one for the larger ones. So you're talking about a dedicated headcount with, deep expertise in the system, or at least they would grow into it. So this is an expensive program.
And we don't necessarily need to hire or replace new people on projects. Another way that we've thought about it inside of Microsoft, and I think we and Google have had some discussions about, is, and actually, I'm sure Mike mentions it later in the document. I mean, it could be that companies who already have security people who are working in those projects, those end up being the contact people, and they become a point that we can liaise with from OpenSSF.
And in addition, obviously every community needs different things. So if the community, if the core maintainer that kind of, I don't want to say owns security, but like is on point for security for the project is, split over kind of their day job and this is their side thing, and OpenSSF can fund them to make this their full thing, like that works too. I think any model works, or any model could work here. Yeah. So I think the big risk of this, obviously, is that the projects kind of don't want our help. I guess if they don't need our help, it's not really a problem. We'll just move on to the next project. And if we move far enough down the line, then we realize that this isn't a problem that needs to be solved. I think where we may have kind of underestimated as we were kind of formulating this idea is what kind of investment this is in terms of time. So we're now thinking that this is a many months to years investment. So we need to be ready. Like if we commit to this, we need to commit to it for at least a few years, because it would do more damage to us from a reputation perspective to come in, have somebody like parachute in and say, hey, I'm going to help you with all things security, and then 6 months later they're out. It has to be on their terms. We have to be very thoughtful here. We're not trading 0 days either, so we need to be careful about the perception of that. We're not paying for access. We're not paying, it's not that kind of thing. I think that would go over terribly in the community. And Luke, I totally hear your point about not thinking that this gives us access to any pre-disclosure anything. I think we would be on the same footing as anyone that would get embargoed vulnerabilities, depending on who we represent as an organization, but that wouldn't be through OpenSSF, or at least not anytime soon.
Well, they would if with the website. I mean, you would have individuals that are going to have insight into those.
Do you mean if the open, so if the person that we are resourcing, do you mean that if they had access to privileged information that I don't think that they should share it with OpenSSF. I think that there should be a firewall of sorts in between there, where when they're working for the project and they have privileged information, they're wearing the project hat on. Just because we're paying their paycheck doesn't mean that we get that privileged information.
Yeah, I mean, there's technical solutions. I'm thinking of, you can have people that need to run the site, okay, and yeah, I don't think that's so much of an issue.
Okay.
The main thing that strikes me is that we're still trying to find a problem, presenting a solution for a problem that we don't really have a grasp on as yet.
Yep, that's
If there is one.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I think we all, so some of the background that this kind of came from, that may make it clear, or at least where directionally where we started from, was we all depend on much of the same open source components, and it makes no sense for us all to do independent, in isolation assessments of zlib and OpenSSL and all these others. It's neither practical nor efficient. So let's pool our resources and do security work, as an industry group, so we can be more efficient, we can get more done, and all that stuff. And then it expanded out a little bit beyond that to what about, like, security quality assurances, like just assurance in general. Like, do they have a security response process? Is it any good? Are they, what's the vulnerability trend look like? And some of this is data that can just be collected, but I think the idea of having someone on point for it means that once the program is if obviously we do the program and the program is up, then we'll know that for the most critical open source projects, there is someone actively looking at it that we know that we have a relationship with.
I would add another very tangible, like here's a problem we're trying to solve. So and this is starting with the executive order, but there will be other other governments that require, and again, this Project Alpha Omega is not specific to the executive order or other government requirements, but that's a piece of it, another driving factor for it. And companies that use open source software will be required to demonstrate conformance that the open source software they use also meets the EO requirements. And so, we do need some kind of system that allows project maintainers to provide information demonstrating that they meet conformance, and then where they don't meet conformance, then there's some work to be done to get all of us up to that level. Certainly for companies that are using open source, which is everyone, so that we can say for certain that both our products and all of the open source we consume meet the bar for security, at least the bar that's met by, as a starting point, the bar that's specified by the US government, and maybe that bar gets higher over the future. Is that fair, Mike?
Totally. So I think that segues perfectly into Omega, which is the other half of this. So while Alpha was the top half of the very small number of most critical components, Omega is everything else. And I would say it probably includes the 100, the top as well, but that's a rounding error. Purpose of Omega is to run high quality tools, collect critical vulnerabilities, auto triage them in a programmatic way as best as possible, and then a little bit better, because we expect to advance the state of the art here. And then have dedicated security analysts do that last leg triage, validate that it is real, and then either create a patch and send it privately to the maintainers, engage the maintainers directly, or just report the issue in a private way, and then kind of move on. So we expect that what this would actually look like is a system for doing the automated tooling that just kind of sucks in the universe and spits out a list of critical vulnerabilities found yesterday. And then the analysts would go in, say, yep, no, maybe, hopefully it's like, well, we would have a target of like 90 to 95% true positive. And then do the reporting, and then they get fixed. And that's kind of our main metric, is like, are we getting critical vulnerabilities fixed? So we don't, while there would be some internal prioritization, obviously if there are, if they can do, I don't know, if they can do 5 a day and there are 500 a day coming in, they're going to target the highest risk of the 500 and do those. Then we can figure out what that algorithm actually looks like. Private sharing, I don't know what that would actually look like, whether it would be through Vince, which is the NIST app there, or an existing program that kind of outsource that function entirely and say, here's the package, someone else like deal with it. Or if that's something that we should manage completely within this program. If we manage it within the program, we would need to resource some sort of a DevRel function to approach maintainers in a consistent and good way. We don't want to poison the community by approaching them the wrong way, especially not something like, here's a copy paste that I grabbed from the output of this tool. Please fix this and let me know when it's done. Like anything like that would be terrible.
I mean, the thing is with tools, automated scanning tools, linters, they're incredibly inaccurate. Okay, that you're going to a large volume of they never find critical issues. Okay, I say this, I'm a maintainer on one of the most popular ones there is. Okay, I've been working in this domain for a long time. You're really, I mean, a lot of this stuff is also freely available already. If you open a GitHub account, you get CodeQL. There's multiple different scanners that you can pull in. It just seems like we're sort of trying to carpet the world, when it might just be easier to wear slippers and just go to each individual project and help them get set up with these tooling.
I totally get the point. So a couple different things. Actually, I'll put this in a couple different ways. One is there are like 2 million projects out there. other than like mass marketing, which I think GitHub has tried to do. And I don't know what the coverage rate for code scanning is on GitHub. I would be surprised if it were, super high, because it is
It's enabled by default now, I think.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think GitHub has, David, you're on mute.
There we go. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, unless that's an extremely recent change. They do make some suggestions, but it's not as easy as you would think.
No, you do. I mean, I've got old repos that I built years ago, and I automatically get sent reports when they find some sort of issue.
No, that you only get automatic reports for dependencies. He's talking a lot more than that. So, there's not going to be fuzzers automatically enabled. There's not going to be source code scanners.
I'm thinking of CodeQL. So, I mean, CodeQL is click, click, click. It's in the market.
Okay. It's not on my, but maybe that's specific. Maybe it's that specific languages.
No, it covers Golang, Python, Ruby gems, quite a few. Security lab.
I've got a repo that's not getting automatically scanned. It's on GitHub and has been for years.
To be honest, yeah, no, you might be right there. I think the dependencies maybe.
The dependencies are
yeah, but
I think that may be automatic.
It's incredibly simple to bring into your project.
Yeah, it's easy to enable, but by default you get the dependabot alerts by default though. But CodeQL you have to put a flag, but it's easy. So I think that's a valid point, Michael. Something is the first step is make sure actually that is enabled itself is a star for the projects, right? I think that's the direction we're trying to move towards.
Oh, actually, yeah, and so we have the data for at least the projects that they're capturing in Scorecard. We can see how many of them have code scanning enabled. So we can just do that. And I think from a best practices perspective, yes, absolutely, we should be advocating for, if it's a click to turn it on, turn it on. So and if that leads to there being nothing that would ever pop out of this, then while I would feel kind of silly and a little bit sad for spending money on something that didn't have anything, I think that would be I would be okay with that if there were just no more vulnerabilities.
There's another thing that Mark Cox mentioned yesterday that I thought was interesting, which is that, and he was talking about the Apache Foundation, and they've done work around security as well. And his point was that, some of these tools raise lots and lots and lots of issues, and the vast majority of those might not even get looked at by the maintainers. And that's because, a lot of them could be an issue, might not be an issue, hard to tell. And so what we talked about is having there be kind of a central place for doing that triaging that could then forward it to the once there's something for certain there, they could then forward a filtered list to maintainers, could be seen as something very valuable by the maintainers.
And I will say that for some projects, particularly at the super high secure, which is more the alpha side, it may be better to modify the code so it doesn't have any of those warnings. There's been a long-standing work in the Linux kernel to do exactly that. Turns out that that's a lot of work. It's hard. On the other hand, once you do that, then all reports are things you look at because you're no longer getting overwhelmed. But I also can see that I think that's a good idea for all projects, but for many projects that already exist, that may not be time that they're going to be wanting to spend. That's going to be a long-term effort for some projects, if they even think that's a good idea.
Yeah. I don't have this in the paper, but I think an ancillary benefit of this is that a lot of the same tools that could be used to find critical vulnerabilities. Well, I'll rephrase that. Tooling in general that could be used to find critical vulnerabilities could also be used to find things like backdoors and custom malware, and yeah, I would say even things like typo squatting. So I don't want to dilute Omega by making it far beyond critical vulnerabilities, but I think a backdoor is a critical vulnerability. So I think it actually does fit if you just kind of turn your head a little bit. And those would be the kinds of things that we cannot trust the project maintainer to install on their own, because they are exactly the wrong people that, you know, would not do that. In addition, the fact that so when I use a piece of open source, I assume all of the risk of using that piece of open source, and I have no visibility into its security state. And that's because the code, so in the GitHub world, the code scanning, you know, results are not public for good reason, but that means that I don't know if it's enabled. If it's enabled, I don't know if it's just full of critical vulnerabilities that the maintainer doesn't care about, or maybe they do care about, but they just haven't gotten to it yet, or kind of anything. So because I'm assuming the risk, I feel like I, as a proxy for the, you know, users of open source, I need to know this information. And I think that that's another thing that I don't think came through in the paper, but.
So you're talking about making the, I'm confused there. What, you're going to make it publicly open? So
No. Well, okay. So I'm on my first cup of coffee, so sorry.
yeah.
No, I think I, as a, okay, so as this program is, provides a service to the world that says, we will go looking for critical vulnerabilities and we will get them fixed for you. So if let's say a third party that wants to know, is the open source that they are using secure? Right now, they can like literally ask the project, if they are, you know, running CodeQL, they can run it themselves. What this project Omega would give them is a third option, which is, I haven't really thought this through too much. Like, what would we say that we've that npm left pad has gone through this and has and no critical vulnerabilities were found? Or like, do we maintain like publish a list of like, I don't know, known good, or I don't know, say good but known not bad. But no, I would not open up the entire data set publicly, because that's just a pile of 0 days. But I think there's something that we could do to provide more broad assurance than just saying, trust us, we're mopping the floor, even though you can't get in the room.
I think what, you know, somehow we can, I think something we should stretch for is something like integrating this with the SALSA program, or maybe CIA best practices badge. So there is something tangible at the end that says, you know, there's, you know, the project meets this level of security quality, and we don't have to show all the results of all the work we did, but we can describe, here's the work that happened, to allow us to say this project meets this security level.
I think that's interesting.
Well, I think that case spot on. I mean, I think that things need to be tangible. I think there are a large number of projects in CNCF, Linux Foundation, Umbrella Foundations, that would, you know, if we're going to score them, we need to map that scoring system and everything how we configure it and how we weight it to SALSA. And then we can deterministically tell projects how they tighten up their build processes, their committer processes, all those things, so they can improve their scorecard and get to the SALSA 3 level rating that we want.
So a lot of SALSA is about how the project is.
Fundamentally, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I apologize, Michael, but
Okay.
I mean, I have some of the similar, reservations I've heard here. It's like we can't get enough experts to dive in, and the attack vectors are not just the code. The attack vectors is the entire build process and mutations that occur and everything like that. I think it's better for us to work on the meta infrastructure, the build infrastructure, making sure the critical projects that take the code out and teach people how to create these processes themselves that we score against. Yeah.
Can we do both? Is it a either or?
Well, I don't. So the thing is, I think I see immediate action that can take it. For example, the project that I'm enamored with and trying to do stuff around is tech time, and I love what we're doing with SigStore, and I love the fact that eventually SigStore can play a role to Salsa. I love that. If you look at Salsa, we talk about source code, build, provenance, and things like that. 98% of the products out here have no attestation, no signing, no task level signing, no built tool level signing. There's no, they don't, but and I know that like SigStore is providing plugins packages for the in record signing, package signing, but TechTime is working with the Chains project trying to get the end signed. I mean, these are the noble things we need to embrace and try and bring to these communities to improve their scoring overall. You have them so they have a process set up. I mean, like I'm grateful I have my projects at Apache Foundation because Apache gave me a process for security vulnerability reporting, for signing, how to add people to the release management, signing keys, how to do all those things, how to create attestation records, all those things. And most projects don't have that. And if we create those frameworks and hand them out to people, I think that goes a much further, and it doesn't require experts. It's very formulaic.
Yeah, I agree. It's just grassroots work.
Okay, but I'd still come back to the, and I'm not saying that, because it exists, we should do it, but is that in some ways orthogonal to this? Because having better, I'm all for having better practices and advocate, like all this SigStore is great. Let's do it. Let's move on it as fast as we can. It's
not just SigStore, it's just, I mean, SigStore supports a plugin model. SigStore represents the concept of end-to-end signing, attestation, transparency that you can bring, and even SigStore itself, and Chains recommends that you can bring in your own KMS keys, your own hardware root of trust keys. So people can bring in their own keying systems, their own processes, but they need a framework to plug it into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's great.
Maybe we could think about this, Michael. Maybe the project is Alpha Delta Omega or something, and we get that helping projects get set up correctly from the from the start.
That's my point. There's a lot of letters between Alpha and Omega, and it's the 80-20 rule, the 90-10 rule. We can get a lot more benefit overall through the entire ecosystem by focusing on the middle letters.
Totally, yes. OpenSSF has a big mission. We have to do lots of different things. I think the question, what I'm trying to get out of this is this a net positive? So would Alpha and Omega be net positive for the industry? And is it so minusculely net positive that it doesn't matter? Or is it good and other things are important as well, and we should not do this and not something else? Likewise, should does it make sense? And if the answer and the consensus is no, we just double down and we do, we embrace Salsa and SigStore and developer best practices and just that stuff, and not do the
I'm saying here's a real example. So my project got attacked last week, and I caught it manually. I have a client tool in my Apache OpenWinds project where someone tried to inject a script into my Travis CI system. That would never have been detected by Alpha or the process, the informal process, manual process detected. But that could have informed us to how to create better automation. So yeah, the person who created a fake ID called Ghost whatever, and luckily GitHub spotted him and deleted his account a few hours later, which is awesome. He didn't let the stuff in because I raised it at the project management committee. And we manually inspected the stuff and we rejected it and reported it. But, you know, there's some automation there. There's some things we could have done with scorecard. There's some things you could have, you know, run to say this idea was only, you know, 1 day old. And even though he signed it in his GitHub thing, you know, it was self-signed and it was not a recognized signature. So it looks like a verified commit. But that would have appeared in the attestation record, but that wouldn't have helped an end user customer say that's a bad actor. So those are things we could have done with scorecard that would have helped that project. And if we fix that at one project, we can translate many more projects.
So let me try to wrap this up, Michael. So I think what Matt is saying is, hey, we also need to get best practices embedded in, and I certainly am not hearing you disagree with that. Certainly, I would say getting best practices. I think what I would say is the proposal needs to make it clear either it's part of or it assumes that there's also an effort to get projects to embed best practices into the project, because in the end, that's really the long-term solution. You've got to fix things or they're not going to get better, but we need to get people trained. We need to get best practices embedded into the projects. And so I think that your proposal looks weaker than it should be because it doesn't clarify that. It's not that the proposal is necessarily wrong. It's just that, as Matt has pointed, and I agree with him, you know, we need to get these practices really embedded into the projects longer term, both with tools and processes. So, you know, I think that's the takeaway, and I don't think that that's a big challenge, although it depends on how you want to do it. I think that's that's good feedback.
Yeah, and then one thought that I would have tactically on that, Michael, is that if we can wrap it into this proposal, it would be better. And the reason I say that is for getting funding for it. If we come forward with one package that says, here are the set of things that we're planning to do, instead of piecemealing it all in one, will make it easier for people to sign up and say, yep, I support that.
Yep. I just wanted to be super clear that, a lot of this is driven out of the best practice work group. And I don't want to, I just want to make it super clear that this isn't me saying, oh, great, everything's, this project. It's totally partnership-y and stuff. So.
That's okay to partner.
I mean, there are pieces of this that we've talked about it before. There are pieces of this that cross all of our work.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I just want to. I think Kay made a good point there, which is if you can piecemeal this, okay, and then you can look to socialize those ideas. You can prototype quickly, fail fast on stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah,
I mean that's something I've spent years doing. I've got 500 to 1,000 projects that never got anywhere, and a few that did. You know what I mean? And it's that thing of just having the ability to quickly set ideas, socialize them, write some code, get something working, share it, get some feedback.
Yep.
Whereas you've got here, I can see you put a lot of work into this, but it's a mammoth scope. If you see what I mean. For
I totally get it. The presumption here is that we'll be wrong on 80% of our assumptions, but the only way to know which one is to try it and then
kudos.
iterate.
If I seem fierce in my challenging, it's just to give you what I'm just kind of the sort of stuff that communities will start grilling you over, if you see what I mean.
I totally appreciate all feedback, so it's all good.
Yeah, one quick comment. I know we're probably trying to wrap this discussion up, but per your XKCD, which is an awesome cartoon, I guess one bit of very high level feedback is I kind of see a mismatch between that and then talking about Kubernetes and the Linux kernel. Like those are projects that have hefty enterprise involvement from engineers who have training on, from their large entities they get their paycheck from on secure coding practices and pipelines. And, Kubernetes has a pretty significant security organization set up. So I'm almost wondering should this be more focused at the projects that people are forgetting about that we do all rely on? You mentioned zlib, and OpenSSL was obviously a big wake up call, with Heartbleed years ago.
So yeah, I totally get your point. And I know your comment isn't about the image specifically. If the image takes away from the message because it like makes you think about one thing and then we're talking about something, yep, we can fix that. Alpha and Omega really are two separate projects that just happen to be tackling the different ends of the spectrum. You're right. The top end of the spectrum needs very different things than the bottom end of the spectrum. I think we should be careful about how we message that, so it doesn't come across as we think that Kubernetes is one of these little guys down here, because they're not. You're right.
Yeah, maybe that's my fault for skimming through some of the first few pages, but yeah, I think messaging that well, to talk about what you're trying to provide at those ends of the spectrum is probably good.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate your feedback.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. That was definitely helpful. Good discussion. So we've only got 5 minutes ish left here. So Crope, I know you had an agenda item as well. I don't know if 5 minutes is enough to cover it. All good. All right, I'll yield the floor to you, and we can.
I need a minute and a half. The Vulnerability Disclosures Working Group has been toiling away at a project, and we've titled it The Guide to Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure for Open Source Software Projects. We are done with the first draft of this document. We're closing comments for the working group next week. I would like the TAC to take a peek at it, and we're proposing to write a blog that the foundation potentially could publish to talk about it. I have spoken. Comments welcome.
Yeah, please look. We want a blog post, and we want the world to use it.
Yes. I'm very excited about blog posts.
Well, it seems like
you write it, I'll help make it happen.
This is exactly the kind of product that I think people were expecting the OpenSSF would release sooner or later. So it's good to see it.
Yes.
Well, and 20 more seconds. The Best Practices Working Group has a similar style artifact. We'll be bringing before the TAC, talk about for comment, and a blog eventually in the next month or so. So hopefully we'll start to have some deliverables to the community to help improve things.
But in fact, if it's okay, I would suggest the TAC say, "Hey, governing board, we want to eventually post this as a blog post. Any comments? Quick!" Because because the governing board is the one that's to approve the blog post. So I think now would be a good time to give the governing board a heads up. Okay.
I was going to say, Kay, did you hear that?
Yes, let's do it. My recommendation for any of those is if you can just, the sooner you can let me know, the sooner I can, share it with the rest of the governing board as a heads up. And then as we get closer, like if we have maybe a week of time to just share it with other people to review, and it's all good. Okay.
I think the main thing I'd be worried about is the governing board says, "Oh, let's look at this document, and oh, wait a minute, I don't want some changes." Well, it would have been a lot easier to do that earlier. So that's what I'm concerned about, is the governing board doesn't want to do a post because they never read the document it's posting about. So, all right.
Cool. All right, any other questions, topics in the next 2 minutes that we have here?
Do you want to talk about elections just briefly? I forget whether you, let me mention to you that some of you know this, but at the governing board level, we are looking at some changes to to the governing board in a couple of ways. The main one is that we've been a non-funded entity for a year with a couple of donations. But next year we're looking to request member dues. And so that's going to be one change. And then related to member dues, we're going to change the governing board structure so that the entities who are paying the dues, the premium level dues, will have more representation on the governing board. So those two things are coming up. The governing board is reviewing those changes, and we'll have a vote on that in the next 2 weeks. And so I'm saying all this related to the TAC elections. I know there was the proposal was to have alternating years, 3 representatives elected by the governing board, 4 by the community. If you wanted the first ones to be the governing board, we should really wait until we get the new governing board set up. If you wanted it to be through the community, I think it could happen at any time. So consideration for you.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been thinking about. I was hoping we'd have a little bit more time to talk about it today, but we can probably kick off an email thread about it. My instinct says that we probably want to start with the community based elections, just because of the nature of kind of how this is all working, plus governing board is kind of in flux, it sounds like. So just for stability reasons, it probably makes more sense to do it that way. I believe back in January, we did come up with a proposal around like how we would decide, who's up for reelection and that sort of thing. And it was a little bit of a kind of ad hoc process. So I think we just need to go kind of refresh that. I can start an email discussion around kind of what we decided. I don't think there's any open issues with any of that, but we can kind of hash that out over email, and then we can kind of get the process started and look towards September for actually being able to get this kicked off. I just can't believe it's this time already. So yeah, we'll get that going, and then by the next TAC meeting, hopefully we'll be able to just kind of wrap it up. All right. Well, with that, we're out of time. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. And like I said, I'll kick off those email discussions. I will attempt to reschedule this leads meeting, and then we will see you all back here in 2 weeks. All right, thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.